Today on TOKKANTE, we're asking the question, does brand expertise matter? And by that I mean, of course, when non-watch brands start making watches. So back when I was working for luxury clients on the agency side, they call that brand stretching. So we'll quickly look at why no, I think it doesn't matter, and then yes, I think it does matter. And why I'm asking this question is because Leica just finally released their L1 and L2 watches that were announced back in 2018. And they've received a lot of negative comments, but I'll tell you why I like a Leica. Hi everyone and welcome, I'm Ben. So does brand expertise matter? First, let's look at why no, I think it doesn't matter. I think what matters is a brand DNA and their approach to product design and their philosophy and dedication, their involvement in the product manufacturing versus completely outsourcing something and just putting their brand name on it. And of course, financial investment. So I think, investing in brand stretching is usually well received if it's approached with those same values. So I'll give you 3 examples. So first, Apple. Apple is widely rumored to be developing an electric car. Now, Apple has no expertise at all in car manufacturing or electric batteries for cars. It knows none of that. But we know that Apple really dedicates itself when they want to do something new, like when they did with the iPhone. So I think, they've acquired companies that do electric batteries. They've hired, apparently thousands of engineers, and they're working on a product that I think most people know they can expect quality. And it may not be perfect, the first version, but it's going to be a quality product, even though Apple has no expertise in it. The second one is Montblanc. So Montblanc was known for, writing instruments or pen, and leather accessories like wallets and bags and things like that. They were not doing any jewelry or watches. But when they started to go into high jewelry and then watchmaking, they've also approached it with the same values, and they invested in it. For watchmaking, they bought Minerva. And now I think Montblanc watches are actually respected for what they are. And the third example is Porsche design. So Porsche design started in 1972 by Ferdinand Porsche. And they went from designing cars for Porsche to, anything from sunglasses to pens and, different things that had nothing to do with cars. And eventually they got into watches as well, and they designed watches, and they really invested in it up to the point that now they are making even in-house movements. So I think Porsche design is also now well respected even for watchmaking. So I think no, it doesn't really matter. So now let's look at the other side of the coin and why I think in fact it does matter. Now I'm not saying it should matter, but I think that in reality or in practice, in fact it does matter. So brands that stretch themselves in categories that are not of their expertise or sometimes not taken as seriously. It's like they don't belong to the club, or they're out of their comfort zone, or especially in watchmaking that has such a long-standing, and conservative history. Fashion brands stretching into watchmaking are not taken as seriously. If we take the case, for example, again of Porsche design, their watches are respected, but Porsche design as a brand, is it respected as a watchmaker or just as a design studio? So I think eventually will hurt their perceived values, which can hurt the retained value and therefore the demand. So I'll give you, 2 examples of this. So let's take Ralph Lauren, for example. When Ralph Lauren, respected fashion brand, went into watches, their watches have never been really taken seriously, even though they're actually manufactured by Richemont, and some of them have very good movements in them. They have Piaget movement, they have JLC movement, they're very well done. Some have this very Calatrava kind of look, and they're very nice watches, but there are really not a lot of collectors that take them seriously, and that's a shame. And the other case is Leica. So Leica has an amazing reputation, over 100 years of making camera, and I think that's not in question. But when they announced that they were getting into watchmaking themselves in 2018, that was really poorly received. And now that they've just announced that the watches are finally out and can be ordered, there are a lot of negative comments about why is Leica getting into watches, and they are not taken seriously at all for this. So let's look at the Leica. Now let's look at Leica as a good example of brand stretching going into watchmaking, and why I think all the hate that they've been receiving lately is really unjustified and undeserved. So Leica is a company that's been making cameras for over 150 years. The company was started in 1869. And they are known for their quality and their craftsmanship. All Leica cameras are actually handmade in Germany. They are handmade. They are basically luxury objects just as much as they are cameras. And maybe to the exception of the digital versions, the Leica mechanical cameras are objects that are not made to be thrown away. They could potentially be used over a lifetime, and there are parallels with, mechanical watchmaking. Leica, there is something special about Leica, the Leica colors, the Leica glass. There are many world famous photographers who shoot Leica. So Leica decided to go into watchmaking in 2012. Before that, they had done collabs where they just basically put their names on other people's watches, and we're not looking at that. But in 2012, the CEO decided that they should invest in watchmaking. And the project took a long time. He actually talked to Audemars Piguet, he got advice from Alain Unzerner, from Henhart. It took a long time, and he talked to a lot of very well-established brands. And in 2018, they finally announced that they were launching the L1 and the L2. And they received very mixed reviews with a lot of negative comments. But for the next 4 years, pretty much nothing happened. They went into a hiatus, and I don't really know the reason. Maybe it took longer than they thought to really establish the projects and build the watchmaking studio. But finally this week, they've announced that the L1 and L2 are now ready for pre-order. It took a long time, but what I really like about Leica is that they did it right. Yes, they did it very slowly, but they did it right, and they did it with a lot of dedication. I really like those two Leica watches because it really shows the level of dedication that the brand went into, and also because they are very Leica, very innovative and very practical. So there are two versions, the L1 and the L2. They're almost identical, just that the L2 is a GMT version of the L1. They're both 41mm in diameter, 40mm in thickness. They're both hand-one movement, it's the same movement, 60-hour power reserve and 50 meter of water resistance. So the watches were designed by Professor Achim Heine, I think in German, I'm not German, but he's the designer of Leica who knows the Leica philosophy and design. He has designed all the cameras and other accessories for Leica, so he also designed the watch. But then they worked with a partner, Lemon Precision, in the Black Forest, which is actually a world leader in mechanical assembly and manufacturing for aviation and for medical equipment and for optical equipment and also for watchmaking and manufacturing watch movements. Actually, in 2011, the owner of Lemon Precision started also his own watch brand, so they're also doing that on the side. And they actually worked together with Leica. They didn't just outsource a movement from Lemon, because Lemon did not have actually a hand-one movement. They worked together to create a movement really to the specification of Leica with advice from Lemon and also, for example, with a patented crown system and everything is made in-house by Lemon. The watches and the case and everything. Even the hands are actually in-house, which is actually very rare. Then Leica actually built a watchmaking studio in their HQ in Wetzlar, where they do the final assembly and also some hand finishing even of the movements. And so this is really the involvement and dedication to watchmaking. They don't just receive the final product from Lemon. They actually do some work themselves. And the movements themselves are very well finished. It's really top-notch finishing for the price. It's not quite to the level of high horology. There are no interior angles here. But when I first look at the movements, the first thing that came to mind is Grunefeld. It really looks like a Grunefeld movement with the raised edges on the bridges, and I think it looks really good. Now, the difference is Grunefeld is probably, of course, a higher level of finish. It's also a different price. And their bridges are made of stainless steel, whereas here it's made of Maillechort. But it's really good, and what I like is that they did not go out to Switzerland, for example, to just outsource a movement and put it in a watch designed by Leica. They really got this movement designed for them by a German company in Germany, and that's in keeping with Leica DNA. So when you first look at the watches, you may fail to see why, they are so Leica, what's so Leica about them. But actually, there are 6 different features on these watches that are very Leica. So the first one is the dome sapphire crystal. When you look at it from the side, it almost looks like an MBMF crystal. It's so domed, but that is made to look like a Leica lens on a camera. Also the red dot, which of course is very Leica, and you find a red dot on the dial to show whether the watch is activated or not, and also the red dot on the crown. Also you have the pusher at 2 o'clock for the date, which is made to look like the footprint of an M camera. Also you have the power reserve on the dial, which is made to look like an old light meter on an M3 Leica camera that you could see in a rangefinder. And then finally, if you flip it to the other side, the movement is made to look like the layout of it, like the Wetzlar HQ apparently view from above. I've read that somewhere, I don't know how true that is. Now, innovation. There is something quite innovative about the Leica watches, and it's about the crown. So the crown is not a push-pull crown, it's not even a screw-down crown, but it's a crown with a push button that is made to look and feel like the shutter release button on the Leica camera. So you press it basically to activate the watch, and then the dot on the dial will turn red, and then you can set the time, and then you press it again to release, the dot will turn white, and the watch will start running again. And this is something that is patented for Leica, that was developed by Lehman for Leica. And I've read somewhere that is something similar but not quite the same available on some Richard Mille, AP and then Grunefeld, but I couldn't be bothered to find out exactly which ones. And then finally, practicality. You know, one thing about Leica cameras is that they should be super easy to use. They are very user-friendly. And the watches are no different. So there are two functions basically that made those watches very practical. The first one is the 2 o'clock date push-up button. So I think probably the CEO got that idea from talking to Lange. But you do not change the date with the crown. You basically push the button at 2 o'clock and then you can advance the date with a very satisfying feeling. The second one is the zero reset function. So when you activate the watch with a push button on the crown, the second sub-dial will automatically reset to 0. And that is such a practical function. I wish that was available in more watches. And again, that's something that Lange, I think, came out first in 1997. And it's also available on the Leica. So in the end, you know, I love it. I think it really shows Leica's dedication as a watch brand to do things right, to get, you know, an exclusive movement design for them by Lehman, and not just get an outsourced product and put their brand name on it. You know, it's modern watchmaking, but with a lot of history and Leica DNA on it. So I like it. Now, of course, there's the issue of the price. You know, the L1 is around 10,000 US dollars, the L2 is 14,000 US dollars, and a lot of comments or people were saying, you know, you could get so much watch for this price. And I understand where they're coming from, but maybe if you don't understand Leica, you don't see the value in it. I think there's value in it, but let's be, you know, realistic. Probably in 2 years from now, you'll be able to get those watches at maybe 2/3 of the price or maybe half the price. So then there'll be amazing value. So what do you think? If you're a photographer, you know, would you rather get a Leica watch or a Ming watch? Let me know. Thank you very much for watching. As usual, you know, subscribe for more. Don't forget to ask yourself what makes you tick, and I'll see you in the next one.